I'm not an expert lug digger,
but I've had some good tips recently, and out there somewhere are some lugworm. So I'm going to try and save myself a little bit of money. We'll run through the pump that I've got, hopefully how you get a few lugworm. As I say, I've had some great input from some top lug diggers locally, so we'll give it a go, see how we get on. We can learn together. Got to be quick because they just start re-digging. Yeah.
Well, if nothing else, it gets you down on this low tide environment. Obviously you push in and draw back on the handle. We'll take a closer look at the pump shortly, but I always think it's worth noting the depth you've got a worm at. And you see we went a little bit deeper with this one. Gives us an idea of how deep they are in the burrows, and we'll take a look at those later. I'm quite surprised how much satisfaction I can get from getting a lugworm. I mean, it's hardly a big bass, is it? But I still get quite some pleasure out of getting a lugworm come out of that tube. So if I pause it there, you can see the depth and the angle of the tube, and that's where we got our worm from. And the idea is you sort of commit that to memory a bit for the patch you're working on, and hopefully there'll be some more at that depth. My friend Terry's been telling me if you're not picking up these worms, then you have to adjust how you're standing, you know, maybe change direction and adjust that angle a little bit. Of course, another factor is sometimes you come down and the worms just aren't there. A lot depends on the tide, time of the year, and obviously the bigger tides, the spring tides that we love on this channel, and expose some of those sandbanks that you don't see on the smaller tides. Now, someone's bound to ask, where is it? Where are you? But I'd encourage you to find your own spot, really. And I don't mean that to be rude. It's simply a case of, you know, if you go down to somewhere at low tide and you notice that the lug casts are there, we know what to look for now, then have a go yourself somewhere else. I mean, again, I'm speaking to more experienced diggers, and even they are finding out, you know, little sandbars or little spots that they've never pumped lug from before, and they'll suddenly find a load. So been is about 4 in a row, and that, you know, you start to get a real buzz if you get 4 pumps and 4 lugs. So well, I wonder whether these are black lug, because the internet tells us. I've had to look it up on the internet because I'm never sure the difference, but apparently the black lug does produce a tightly coiled, neat cast with a depression in the middle, whereas the blow lug, which I'm used to seeing, produces more of a messy cast with a small depression separate to the cast. But when you look at these two here, you can see very neat cast, and there is some movement in that depression in the middle, isn't there? Anyway, that's what the Wildlife Trust tell us, but there's certainly a worm in there. It's important to know what that lugworm's doing underneath the sand as we try to find them with our lug pump. They live in U-shaped burrows. On one end you've got the poo, the squirrely bits of sand that we see from the surface, and its head will be facing like a little indentation, and that's where it feeds. And it sort of feeds out of that hole, which is trapping its food. And the tail is pooing out all that, the curly stuff you can see on the surface made out of sand. So the issue is we need to get the pump into that little hole, and that is our lugworm. Now this could be a J-shaped burrow, it hasn't completed it yet as it moves through the sand, and it's important that we get the right angle then on the pump. If we go at too acute angle, we may go past it. If we go down too shallow, we might not reach the U-shaped burrow, and what we're looking for is to go right into it at an angle, so that when we pull back on the handle of the pump, we're drawing out the worm inside its hole. It's more of a sort of sloppy sound as well, because you've got a bit of air and it's not quite so densely packed with sand inside that burrow.
Well, that looks alright, but we just burst the tail, didn't we? Oh, nice, good one that. You can get it on the second go. Yeah. Good tip I was given, after you've been doing it for about half an hour, it gets a bit jammed up, particularly in this sand. But they said do this. And then you can always put, you've got to tighten up that nut. So I carry a 10mm socket for that. That's it, let's get back on it. So we are coming just before low tide, and one of the tips that I was given was don't take the dog with you. The pattering of a dog's feet does actually disturb the lug beds apparently, and having seen these lug move, they're actually quicker than you might think, so any little extra that I can do to catch these will be good. So the tide's going out. Normally at the turn of the tide, just like the fishing, just as the tide starts to turn, you do quite well, but on like a little high section here, there's a few casts, not loads, not bad though, a little bit wet in this section.
This white foam I think is the gully water. When it gets mixed in with the waves, it can get really foamy.
Certainly make these up on your own. I found the hardest part was sourcing the bar that goes through the middle. Dave the Hastings angler is someone else you might want to follow. He goes into a lot more detail. I don't know if you can see here, you know, that's like the normal depth I think I was getting the worms, but sometimes I'll go down that deep and wonder why I haven't got any worms. So it's such a learning experience. I'm picking up little tips all the time, so if you do have any, stick them down below and we can all benefit from them. But I certainly prefer this sort of pumping for this sort of ground around here. So what I've been told is to work backwards with the tide. That way you're not stepping over all the lug beds on your way back. We've got a problem today. Today's raining, and Terry did say kills it in the rain, so I've got a ready-made excuse. And the other thing as well, this needs tightening up. I'll show you how to do that in a bit. And the other alternative, of course, is to dig the lug. It's hard work. So there's two different types of lugworm. You've got your blow lug and your black lug. You can always use washing up liquid. You can always use the washing up liquid to lubricate the seals a bit better, and that'll give you a better seal as they push through the pipe. You've got two lots really, one at the top here, and then the one like the plunger one that moves up and down the 22mm pipe. You can make them yourself, of course. Stop you pushing too far. There's a little bit of tube in here. The plunger works its way up and down. So there's a nut on the end, that's the one that we were tightening up earlier. And then it's basic plumbing gear really, so as long as you've got a spanner for that little bit of rubber to stop you pushing all the way down. And on the end there, you just sort of soldered on a little nut. And onto that nut, you've got, I mean, again, people do it slightly differently, but you've got washers, which you can just buy these on eBay actually, set to the right diameter for that pipe, and then a washer or two on either end of those. That's what you want to get the washing up liquid on, just to create a better seal and stop the sand sort of wearing away at those. But those will soon go, and it is best, again, this is Terry telling me the other day, it's best to take it all off after you've had a session pumping, wash it down and put it back on together. You can see the nuts going a bit rusty there, but and that socket set on the end will tighten or loosen that, as long as you can get access off the, leaves about an inch off the bottom of the pipe to get that in. I think the hardest thing is to find that rod, and then you've got another rubber washer trapped between the normal washers there for the top section of that T section there. And then the handle goes on the T bit. Pretty basic design. I mean, you can have a go yourself. If you have had a go, let us know. But as I say, Dave makes them, and I'll leave a link to his one. Makes them a bit better than this. We'll have a look at those in a minute. So it really is quite enjoyable digging your own worms, and I know, you know, obviously we're going to save a bit of money, but just getting out there in this coastal environment is just enough in itself really. You can really devastate an area just by taking everything from the same spot. You know, move on, go to a different spot,
and keep moving, because if you take everything out of one area, you can obviously devastate a mini ecosystem there. So you're going to use about 20 worms, aren't you, for a session, so don't really need more than that. In terms of keeping them, in terms of keeping these worms, and whether you gut them, salt them, or keep them live and fresh, that's the topic of another video, but I do prefer to keep these live, either in seawater that I change 3 times a day, or just have them in a pot and use them straight away if I can. You know, you pick up the bait on the low tide and then fish just as the tide turns with that bait you just caught. But of course, you know, if you get a few more, you can salt some like we've done recently.
So in the end there is a 10mm nut. You just need a spanner, tighten it, sometimes you need to loosen it, and then at the end of your session it's always best just to strip the whole thing down, make sure it's nice and clean. This is a really good pump actually. I did have one that was bought on eBay. It's not as good as this. This is from Dave, my friend Dave. He's got a YouTube channel just about lug pumping, so he knows a lot more than me. It's worth checking out.
So this is the version I've got from Dave. It's got some air hose that to stop that plunging right the way through, and then the central rod's a little bit better quality. Not quite sure what it's made of, but it's certainly not rustic like the last one was. And then a good stainless handle as well. Makes a difference. You've got 2 handles there, and then that T-section again like on the other pump. But this one seems to pump a bit better. I mean, a lot of it is how well you look after it, isn't it? There we go. If you do put them down and not put them straight in the bucket, sometimes they do dig themselves out of trouble. Look. At least one of these did. And they made a bid for freedom. Never got him back.
Well, it took about 45 minutes to get all those lug. Brilliant. I've just been out today. I spent an hour and a half digging, and this is what I've got.
So it just goes to show, don't be disheartened if you're not getting any. Conditions change, the venue could change, even as we were saying earlier, the angle that you're pumping will dictate how well you catch. So yeah, not a very good session there, but it can be really, really good. You know, if you really get into it and you get on a nice run of them, you can get the amount that you saw in that thumbnail there. So please don't be disheartened if you're not getting any. I've certainly had a few sessions over the past couple of months where it's been real hard work. But it is worth it. It really is worth it. Please give it a go if you can, and let us know how you get on in the comments. It's a great way to involve yourself in the coastal environment, as we were saying earlier. So if you want to know how to use these lug to good effect, you can check out the video on the right there. That's how we got on when we went fishing with them. Alternatively,
Gotta be quick.
YouTube really wants you to watch that video on the left, and then the video on the left is what YouTube wants you to look at.